I had picked a soft blue dress for the occasion, something elegant but not too showy. After all, the spotlight was supposed to be on my daughter, not me. Amelia had just graduated with honors, and we were gathered at a private dining room in an upscale restaurant to celebrate her achievement. The space buzzed with laughter, clinking glasses, and the warmth that comes with family and friends gathering for something good. I sat at the head table, smiling, soaking in Amelia's joy. Gregory, my husband of 28 years, stood up to give a toast. I watched him raise his glass, his expression unreadable, and I felt something shift inside me. I knew that look. Cold, detached, calculated. "I've decided to start a new life," he said, pausing just enough for the silence to fall heavy across the room. "Without Bianca." For a few seconds, no one moved. Silverware froze in midair. The laughter died in throats. Dozens of eyes darted between Gregory and me, waiting, some in confusion, others with anticipation for my reaction. People expect drama in moments like this. Tears, screaming, maybe even a drink thrown across the room. But I didn't give them any of that. Instead, I reached into my purse and pulled out a small sealed envelope. Without a word, I stood up, walked to Gregory, and placed it gently in his hand. My fingers didn't tremble. My eyes didn't water. I smiled at him, not warm, but not cold either. Just final. Then I turned to Amelia, kissed her on the forehead, whispered, "I'm proud of you," and walked out. He followed me, of course. "Angela." "Wait. What is this?" he called out, waving the envelope like it might bite him. I didn't stop. The click of my heels against the polished marble echoed in the corridor as I exited the restaurant and stepped out into the evening air. He caught up to me just outside. "Angela," he said again, breathless now. "What the hell is going on?" I looked at him for a moment, my silence louder than anything I could have said. Then I walked away. That envelope? It wasn't some emotional note. It was a carefully prepared document. Copies of emails, screenshots of late-night transactions, bank statements, and proof of hotel bookings under a different name. For the past 3 months, I had known about him and his new flame, a woman barely older than our daughter. I had also known about the offshore accounts, the money he'd been siphoning quietly, maybe thinking I would notice or wouldn't understand. But I noticed everything. I didn't explode. I didn't accuse. I just observed. And then I made plans. That night, as I sat alone in the small guest house I'd secretly been renting for the past few weeks, I let myself exhale. The hardest part was over, not the betrayal itself, but keeping it together long enough to give Amelia the graduation day she deserved. Because this wasn't about Gregory anymore. This wasn't even about me. It was about making sure my daughter didn't associate one of the most important milestones in her life with humiliation or chaos. Gregory thought he was delivering the shock of the evening. He had no idea I'd already packed most of my things, moved key assets into a private account, and filed a quiet petition through my attorney. The envelope was not a reaction. It was the final move in a game he didn't know I was playing. And the best part? I hadn't raised my voice once. When I got back home that evening, the house felt unnaturally still. The kind of stillness that settles right before a storm rolls in. But I wasn't scared of the storm. I had already stood in the middle of it, watched it build, and made sure I was prepared when it hit. Gregory's things were already packed. Neat rows of designer suit jackets hung in garment bags by the front door. A few boxes were stacked beside them, his files, golf clubs, and the framed photo of his late father, which he always kept on his desk. So, he had planned to leave after the celebration. The champagne toast turned ambush wasn't spontaneous. He must have practiced those words, maybe even in the mirror. I imagined him rehearsing it like a performance, thinking he'd catch me off guard. But the thing he never understood about me was this: I don't crumble under pressure. I don't scream. I don't beg. I calculate. I walked through the living room, past the untouched cake he'd insisted we order for Amelia. The congratulations banner still hung crookedly from the mantel. My heels clicked softly on the hardwood as I made my way to the kitchen, where I poured myself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. I didn't cry. A soft knock on the side door pulled me from my thoughts. It was Amelia. Her makeup was smudged from tears, her gown slightly wrinkled, and her eyes wide with confusion and heartbreak. "Mom," she whispered. "What's happening?" I opened my arms, and she folded into them like she did when she was a little girl. "I'm okay," I whispered into her hair. "I promise you I'm okay. I just didn't want today to be about anything else but your success." She pulled back to look at me. "Did you know?" I nodded gently.
For a while now.
"But this wasn't your burden to carry. Not today." She stayed for a few more minutes before quietly leaving for her friend's place, saying she needed time to process. I didn't stop her. She deserved that space. An hour later, the front door burst open. Gregory stomped inside like he owned the air between the walls. His face was red, his tie loosened, and the envelope crumpled in his hand. "What the hell is this?" he barked, slamming the papers on the kitchen counter. I didn't flinch. I took another sip of my water and calmly looked him in the eye. "You don't get to raise your voice in this house. Not anymore." "I asked you a question, Angela. Were you spying on me?" "No," I said quietly. "I was protecting myself." His jaw clenched. "You've been collecting this crap behind my back? You ambushed me. You mean like how you ambushed me in front of 50 people while our daughter was still wearing her graduation cap?" He said nothing, just stared. I stepped around the island and placed a folder beside the envelope he just tossed. "These are certified copies of every wire transfer you made from our joint account to your private one. Every hotel booking is with your little weekend getaway partner. And all the emails you sent to her from your office laptop." He blinked once, then again. "This is insane." "I also had a copy of our prenuptial agreement reviewed by my attorney," I continued, cutting him off. "Remember that clause you insisted was unnecessary? The one that stated if either of us committed infidelity, they forfeited claim to the marital estate." Silence. "You're bluffing," he muttered. "No court will." "They will," I said, my tone sharp now, "because I didn't just get emotional, Gregory. I got legal. Everything is backed up, time-stamped, and validated." He sank into the nearest chair like the weight of the truth finally hit him. "Why didn't you say anything sooner?" he asked, quieter this time. "Because I didn't want a messy divorce. I didn't want Amelia dragged into shouting matches. I didn't want my dignity shattered while you tried to rewrite the story. So I waited. I let you believe you had the upper hand." He looked at me like he didn't recognize the woman standing across from him. "I know who she is," I added. "I even know her lease is under your name. I could have ruined you, Gregory."
But I chose not to.
"You did that all by yourself." He opened his mouth, but no words came out. For once, the man who always had something to say, some excuse, some deflection was silent. I walked away, leaving him sitting in his mess, and went upstairs. I didn't slam the door.
I didn't cry.
I had already done all my grieving long before that night. Diana's home felt nothing like mine, yet strangely, it brought a comfort I hadn't expected. Warm, lived in, full of family photos and soft throws that smelled faintly of lavender. Diana, Gregory's older sister, opened her arms without hesitation the moment I showed up at her doorstep, suitcase in hand, and a tired smile masking the emotional exhaustion underneath. "You don't even have to explain," she said gently, guiding me inside. "You're safe here, Angela. Whatever you need." I had always liked Diana. She was sharp, no-nonsense, and fiercely loyal to the truth. Despite being Gregory's sister, she'd never been blind to his flaws. And when she heard what happened, her only reaction was quiet rage on my behalf. 2 nights later, Amelia arrived with puffy eyes and trembling hands. She collapsed into my arms the second she walked through the door. I held her like I used to when she scraped her knee as a child. Only now the wounds were deeper, wounds I couldn't just kiss and fix. "I can't even look at him," she whispered. "He didn't just leave you, Mom. He left all of us." I didn't say much. I just stroked her hair, silently mourning the version of her father she had believed in. Some betrayals hit harder when they touched not just a marriage, but a child's trust. We tried to create some form of normalcy in Diana's home: morning tea, evening walks, quiet dinners. But peace never lasts when ego is involved. Late one afternoon, the front doorbell rang. Diana peeked through the window and shot me a glance. It's him. And he brought her. I rose slowly. Let them in. Gregory walked in with Cassandra trailing behind him, visibly uncomfortable, her eyes darting from the floor to Amelia to me. Gregory, on the other hand, looked furious but composed, the kind of composure that only comes before manipulation. We need to talk, he said, skipping pleasantries. I folded my arms. Go ahead. You froze all the accounts, Angela. I can't access the funds. My company cards are flagged. This is beyond petty. This is legal, I replied calmly, and temporary, until the court decides how things will be divided. Cassandra shifted beside him. You said everything was amicable. Gregory's jaw twitched. It was, until she started acting like a victim. Amelia stood up then, her voice trembling with fury. You humiliated Mom in front of everyone, lied to her and cheated. And now you're mad she's protecting herself. Amelia, this is between adults, Gregory started. No, it's not, she yelled. You broke this family, Dad. Don't pretend you're the one being wronged. The room fell quiet. Cassandra looked at Gregory like she was seeing something new. Or maybe something she had tried to ignore until now. You told me you and Angela had been separated for months, Cassandra said quietly. You said she was emotionally distant, that the divorce was mutual. I looked at her, but there was no hatred, just pity. Is that what he told you? I asked gently, because that's not what the court documents will say. Cassandra turned to Gregory. Did you lie to me? Cassandra, don't, he began, but she stepped back like she needed physical space to process. You said you had your finances in order, that there wouldn't be any legal mess. But you didn't even tell me about the prenup, or the house being in her name. That was when it happened. His mask cracked. Not completely, but enough. The smug assurance in his tone faltered. His voice wavered. He reached for Cassandra's hand, but she recoiled. You're not who I thought you were, she muttered before walking out the door. Gregory stood alone in the living room, shoulders slumped, the weight of consequences finally pressing against him. I gave you everything, he muttered. Everything I had. No, I said softly. You gave me what was convenient, but not once did you give me honesty, loyalty, or respect. And now you're shocked that I've chosen to take control?
He didn't respond.
Within 48 hours, my attorney had filed the necessary motions. All shared accounts were officially frozen. Gregory's access to our marital estate was restricted pending court review. Even his car lease, which I had co-signed, was suspended. The man who once moved through life with complete authority was now learning what it meant to be powerless. And Cassandra? She stopped answering his calls. Watching the illusion of his perfect narrative fall apart wasn't satisfying in the way I thought it would be. It didn't bring joy, but it brought something else, clarity. He had built his life around control and image, but now that both were slipping, all that remained was the truth. And I wasn't going to let him escape it. The courthouse was quiet that morning, too quiet. I sat in the hallway outside the courtroom in a navy blue suit I'd carefully chosen, not too bold, not too soft. Just strong enough to remind myself I wasn't the same woman Gregory had so confidently tried to cast aside. My attorney sat beside me, flipping through files, calm and collected. I wasn't nervous. Not anymore. I had already faced the worst. Gregory arrived 10 minutes before the preliminary hearing started, flanked by two attorneys who looked far too young and slightly unprepared. One kept whispering in his ear, the other fumbling with paperwork as they rushed to organize their notes. He looked nothing like the man who used to command boardrooms. He looked tired.
Hollow. Beaten.
Inside, the hearing moved quickly. The judge, a stern woman with sharp eyes, was already familiar with the documents. My legal team had submitted everything well ahead of time. Gregory's team scrambled to argue against the prenup's enforcement, claiming emotional coercion, but the judge barely entertained it. This agreement, she said, flipping through the signed pages, was clear. It included a fidelity clause, signed without duress, witnessed and notarized. It will be upheld. Gregory blinked like someone had just slapped him. His attorney tried again, stuttering through a rebuttal, but the judge had already moved on. Until the financial disclosures are complete and a final hearing is set, I'm freezing all joint marital accounts and assets. Temporary possession of the primary residence will remain with Mrs. Hartwell. Gregory turned to look at me for the first time that morning, disbelief painted across his face. I didn't flinch. I met his gaze with the same steady calm I had held since the night of Amelia's graduation. He underestimated me.
He thought I'd fall apart.
After the hearing, I stepped out into the sunlight, letting the warmth hit my face. For the first time in weeks, I breathed without the weight on my chest. 2 days later, Cassandra packed her things and moved out of the condo she and Gregory shared. I didn't hear it from him. I heard it from Diana, who got a tearful call from Cassandra herself. She didn't know, Diana told me, about the accounts, about the loans, about the fake investment portfolio he bragged about. Gregory had even borrowed against a business loan he'd never repaid. Cassandra was furious, humiliated, and heartbroken. She left a note behind and vanished from his life, without another word. He was losing everything, but more than that, he was losing the illusion of being the man in control. As for me, I didn't just sit around waiting for court dates. I started building. For years, I had been the woman behind the scenes, balancing the budget, planning the fundraisers, reviewing contracts Gregory didn't have time for. I had kept our family running like a well-oiled machine, while putting my own aspirations aside. Not anymore. I registered a consultancy firm using my maiden name, Angela Monroe and Company, specializing in event logistics and nonprofit strategy. It started small, just a website and a pitch deck I'd quietly worked on while staying at Diana's. But momentum built quickly. Old contacts from Amelia's school committees and charity boards reached out. My inbox is filled with opportunities. I wasn't trying to prove anything to Gregory or the world. I was just proving something to myself, that I was capable, valuable, and worthy of standing on my own. Word of Gregory's legal troubles spread quietly through our social circles. A few whispered conversations at luncheons, a couple of side eyes at networking events. The man who once enjoyed admiration for his charm and success was now associated with scandal, infidelity, and frozen accounts. People expected me to lash out, to take interviews or post cryptic social media updates. But I said nothing. I didn't need to explain myself. My silence became my power. One afternoon, while I was finalizing contracts for my first major client, I received an email from a former acquaintance, someone who used to praise Gregory at every function. I never realized how much you were holding up the foundation of that family. Watching how you've handled everything. It's inspiring. I didn't respond. I just smiled and closed the email. Because I wasn't looking for validation anymore. I had already won. Not in court, not on paper, but in the quiet strength it took to walk away with my dignity intact. In the patience it took to prepare. In the courage it took to start again. The morning of the final court hearing arrived with an odd stillness. The air was crisp, the sky clear, as if the universe itself had decided to pause for a moment. It didn't escape me that the date on the calendar, March 17th, marked what would have been our 29th wedding anniversary. Almost 3 decades of partnership, and yet here we were, about to sign the final page of its unraveling. I didn't wear black or gray. I wore ivory, a soft, clean slate of a color. Because this wasn't a funeral for my past, it was the birth of something new. In the courtroom, the proceedings were swift. After weeks of evidence, motions, and silence, the judge made her ruling with the finality of a gavel that echoed through every inch of my being. The prenuptial agreement stands as written, she said. Mrs. Hartwell will retain full ownership of the primary residence, her retirement accounts, and 70% of the marital investments. Gregory sat beside his attorney, shoulders sagging, his face pale. He didn't argue. Not today. The man who once controlled every room he walked into now looked like someone finally realizing what he'd gambled and lost. After the judgment, he approached me in the corridor. Not the same fiery, entitled man from weeks earlier. This version of Gregory looked smaller, weighed down by something heavier than just financial loss. I'm sorry, Angela, he said quietly. For everything. I looked at him for a long moment. Maybe part of me once would have wanted to hear those words. But not anymore. I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I was simply done. I believe you, I said. But I also believe that sorry doesn't always change things. He nodded, eyes searching mine. Do you think, maybe one day? No, I interrupted gently. There's no going back to something I had to fight my way out of. And just like that, I walked away. No dramatic exit. No last word. Just a quiet, final step toward the life I had rebuilt piece by piece. Caldwell Financial Transitions was no longer just a budding firm. It had grown into a full-scale consultancy, helping women navigate the emotional and financial chaos of divorce and major life changes. What started as a seed of independence in Diana's guest room had become something meaningful, something mine. Clients came through referrals, then online searches, then eventually word of mouth. I hired a team. I trained young women who reminded me of myself, smart, capable, and underestimated. Amelia, now working part-time while applying to law schools, helped me review client cases. She handled contracts like a pro and asked thoughtful questions during meetings. More than once, I caught her pausing during lunch just to say, "I'm proud of you, Mom." She had come through her heartbreak, too, with a strength I admired deeply. We had become each other's soft landing and strongest backbone. On the anniversary of our final court date, exactly 1 year later, I hosted a quiet gathering at my home. Just close friends, Diana and Amelia. No speeches, no decorations. Just food, laughter, and warmth. At one point, while standing by the kitchen window, I looked out over the backyard where we'd once hosted Gregory's company barbecues. I didn't feel sadness. I felt clarity. That betrayal? It had once broken me. I won't pretend otherwise. But now, standing in my kitchen, in a home that was legally and emotionally mine, I saw it for what it had truly been, the moment that gave me my life back. It had stripped away the noise, the illusions, and the role I had been expected to play. And underneath all that, I found a woman who didn't just survive, she reinvented herself. Fully, fiercely, peacefully. I hadn't just escaped the ruins of a marriage. I had built something stronger in its place myself.